Penn State football 2026. It's got quite the season ahead of them. We talked defense last week. This week, it's about the offense. Rocco Beck leading the offense. A couple new running backs, James Peoples, Carson, Hansen. A couple new wide receivers, not just a couple, but a good amount of new wide receivers. New tight end in the room. Some new offensive linemen in the room. It's going to be an interesting season for the Nittany Lions with a lot of talent, a lot of experience that could impact the season greatly. We have Chris here to talk about it with us once again here on the Big Ten Huddle, presented and brought to you by FanDuel. Chris, the offense, what are your kind of overarching thoughts on it a little bit? And then I know you want to mention something about recruiting rankings. So start with kind of your overarching thoughts on the offense, and then we can get into your thoughts on some of the recruiting ranking stuff.
Well, so the offense, I'm kind of excited to see what they do. I mean, Matt Campbell, regardless of who's offense coordinator, he seems to have a pretty good track record developing good offenses. So Taylor Mouser is the offensive coordinator. He came up in 2023, I believe it was. Nate Scheelhaase was their offensive coordinator at Iowa State. So he kind of came up learning under Nate Scheelhaase a little bit. Mouser's a young guy. He looks like he's pretty smart, bright, innovative. The one thing I could say about this offense, there are two things I could say is there's gonna be a lot of heavy tight end usage. They really they kind of play to their strengths. And so Rocco Becht in 2023 2023, 2024, he threw for a lot more yardage. It might have been a little less tight end usage because they had Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knowles, 2,000-yard receivers, NFL guys. Going into 25, he didn't have them. They still have some decent receivers, I believe. But that's where they went, I think, a little more heavy tight end usage. And I think that's going to carry over from everything I've seen this year into 2026 with Penn State. It's going to, in one way, look similar, I think, to what Penn State did last year with Andy Klodlnicki. I think it's just going to be a lot more efficient, and they're going to be taking their shots down. They're absolutely going to be taking their shots downfield more. And I just think it should probably gel a lot quicker. Like last year, the offense, obviously last year just sucked all the way around. But even when they were scoring points and even beating up on some of the teams earlier in the year, that just the crappy teams, it never seemed to click right. It just seemed like something was out of place, like they weren't running smooth. And hopefully this year it'll be a lot different. So you're going to see a lot of 12 personnel and even a lot of 13 personnel, a lot of heavy tight end usage. And by all accounts, it just seems like it's going to be, a lot of heavy tight end usage, which will create extra gaps, extra running lanes. And it's going to be a lot of pounding the rock with three different running backs and taking your shots, and taking your shots downfield when they present themselves. One thing I like about Taylor Mouser, he said this in an interview with LeVar Arrington, is he said, I forget what the question was. It's something along the lines of taking your shots deep and getting wide receivers downfield more ball. He's like, oh, don't worry. I could promise you that's going to happen. And he opened up, I think he said last year, it was either 4 or 5 games. He opened up when the offense had the ball, just going deep right out of the gate. So I think, you're finally going to see no excuses about the lack of talent, no excuses about the wide receivers not being good enough. You're finally going to see, and it took forever, a coach that could give us a downfield passing attack. It's not going to be this huge air raid where they're, an old school Texas Tech just throwing the ball deep all the time, or a Big 12 team. But I think you are going to see a much more consistent and efficient downfield passing attack. It's just, like I said, it's going to be pound the rock, play action, different formations, different alignments, manipulate the defense, shifts, motions, and take your shots where they present themselves. So you want me to get into the position stuff now, or?
Well, I'll just say, music to my ears with that. Get away from the Andy Klodlnicki, trickery stuff with it and everything. Just line up, go after the other team in front of you, especially when you got these tight ends, Benjamin Brahmer and Andrew Rappleyea. I believe I'm saying that right. I probably am not.
Yeah,
but yeah, close enough, right? But you got two really good tight ends in this situation. Penn State has one of the best safety duos in the country, and they potentially could have one of the best tight end duos in the country. Rappleyea, he's a really good tight end. He was injured that one season, so he's not had maybe as much experience as some other guys out there, but he was highly rated. He's going to be a good player for Penn State this season. Matt Campbell's going to use him well, I think. So I'm all for the 12 personnel and stuff like that. Go ahead and say your thing about the rankings first, and then we'll get into the positions.
Well, I was just going to say, so a buddy of mine, and he knows who he is because I'm going to send him the show. I sent him the first show I did. He's total respect for this guy. He's really connected with, I'm not going to say who he is, but one of the top high school programs in Pennsylvania. And he's just very connected with the whole with college recruiting and rankings. He even has some NFL connections. And he just really knows his stuff. I don't know if you want to say like behind the scenes or whatever, but he's been around a long time. He knows his stuff. And it's just like, he would get in kind of arguments with me about, and actually, I think we pretty much agree on what we're saying. But like he would get in arguments with me when I'd complain that we got like Penn State got to do a little better than like finishing like 20th or 21st in the team rankings. And he would sit there and say how heavily influenced the rankings are. His biggest issue was the people doing the rankings they don't go off of just what their own knowledge is. Like his biggest issue is you could have a guy like Charles Powers, Andrew Irvins, that have like a degree in journalism, never played football, no experience with it. And they'll rank guys. Now they're supposed to go off their own knowledge, their own watching games, their own evaluations. But you'll have a guy that's a 3-star, average 3-star, middle of the cycle. All of a sudden you get some big offers from some big programs, Bama, Notre Dame, whoever. And all of a sudden now these guys bump their rankings up to like now they're a 4-star or higher. And on the flip side, you could have a guy early in the cycle that they have ranked pretty high, like a borderline 5-star, but he's very overrated. He's not getting big offers. Now all of a sudden they drop in the rankings. And I totally agree with them on that. Like I have no issue saying that obviously these guys are going off with what the coaches are like, the offers they're getting from big programs and stuff. But my thing is, doesn't that, even though that makes the people doing the rankings kind of fraudulent, but doesn't that give the overall rankings, though, more credibility if they're kind of basing them off the offers and what big-time coaches and programs are looking at? Like, end of the day, I don't care if it's Charles Powers, Andrew Irvins. I don't care if it's Ryan Day, Marcus Freeman, or the mechanic down the street that changed my oil. Like, end of the day, there's still just an enormous amount of proof that the schools that finish highest in the rankings have always been the ones that usually have done the best and compete and win championships, minus 1 year with Indiana. So that's why I don't disagree with the premise of what he's saying. But, end of the day, show me how many teams are winning championships that have a roster filled with classes that are outside the top 20 besides 1 year at Indiana. It just doesn't happen. But again, shout out to him. You're a good friend. I appreciate all the insights you give me, and I look forward to keep chopping it up with you. So on to the positions, unless you want to say something about that. I don't know.
Nah, go ahead.
All right, so we'll just start off with quarterback Rocco Becht. So everybody knows about Rocco Becht by now. I think he's probably the most veteran quarterback in college football, probably has the most starts to date of current players who's going to play this year. Now, one thing I read about Rocco and the offense, they're going to look to run him a little more than what they did. And he's a good runner. He's a good athlete. Kind of Trace McSorley-esque. I don't know if he's quite as fast as what Trace was, but they're going to look to use his legs, run him a lot more. He throws a beautiful deep ball. The one knock on Rocco, and I said this like I know on a video like a year ago or several months ago, he's actually the opposite of Drew Aller, where Drew was hesitant to take his shots downfield. This guy will he'll force the ball. He might take his shots a little too much trying to force it. Where the one thing with him is just, cleaning up some of the interceptions, not taking unnecessary risks. So like I said, 2023, he threw for 3,120 yards, 23 touchdowns. 24, he threw for 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns. Again, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, big difference. Why? Little bit of a down year in 25, threw for 2,500 yards and 16 touchdowns. So, but I have full confidence in Rocco. He's supposed to be healthy this year. I will note last year he was playing in his non-throwing shoulder. He had a torn labrum, and in his throwing shoulder, he had a sprained AC joint. Mm-hmm. That's, probably not the easiest to play through. I'm sure that affected his play a little bit, but he's supposed to be back and healthy. Alex Mansky, I know there's a lot of Penn State fans that were a little leery about Mansky because he had a little bit of a health scare, and it wasn't even an injury related. It was kind of more of a personal, I'm just going to say not injury related, but kind of something else. He's fully healthy and ready to go. He's 100% back. I really like Mansky. I think the kid has a ton of potential. He's 6'3", like 210 pounds. Big, strong runner, big arm. He's a backup. Obviously very important to keep these guys healthy. So we'll go on to running back. Christian Hansen, everybody knows about him. Another veteran returning. Big, strong runner, pound the rock type of guy in between the tackles. Not a burner, not a guy that's going to, break away and run away from guys, but a strong runner. He's going to be your starting running back. The number 2 running back is going to be between James Peoples and Quinton Martin. So I have been told by my one guy who's, speaks with certain people that are connected with the staff, or to the staff, I should say, that said Quinton Martin had a huge spring. That Quinton Martin has looked as good as any guy they've had. They wanted him to gain weight. He's put on some weight. I don't know if they hit the exact number they wanted, but he supposedly had a huge spring. And I look for him possibly to actually be the number 2 back. And James Peoples is very good at back, but I think Martin might have a little more upside. And depending, I think probably has more breakaway speed. And from everything you've heard, it'll be interesting to see how they divvy up the carries, because there's a lot of running back by committee with 2 guys, but with 3 guys, is that going to be where it's like, you get around 10 carries a game? Is one guy going to separate? So interesting to see how that plays out. So on to receivers, I think receivers is kind of the biggest question mark here. Because you had Chase Sowell and Brett Eskildsen that started last year for Iowa State. They're going to be starters this year at Penn State. They both had 500 yards receiving last year. Eskildsen is 6'1", 6'1.5". The guy could fly. He runs a 10.5 and 100. He's the guy that they took a lot of deep shots with. He's just a burner, and he has some skills as a route runner. But he's a burner, hopefully with better protection, another year under his belt. We get some more consistency and some better numbers out of him. He's going to be the Z receiver. Chase Sowell is 6'3", big-bodied receiver. He's going to be your X receiver. He's supposed to be your main talent. A lot of people are predicting him to be the number 1 go-to receiver. He's not he doesn't have bad speed. He has a quick burst. He covers ground pretty quick in his get off his first 10 yards. I think he's like a 4-5 guy. And with him, I think it's just consistency. Good route runner, big body. Had some drops last year. He has to clean up some of the drop passes, but he's supposed to be the number 1 receiver. And then you have Koby Howard. Now, Koby Howard's interesting. I think Koby Howard could have a very big year. Very talented. He's listed in the slot. Now, I don't know. Now, when they go with 11 personnel, he'll be the slot receiver. When they go with 12 personnel, it's going to be Sowell and Eskildsen, but Koby Howard could also play the Z and the X receiver. So it's not going to be every time that they go with 12 personnel that Koby Howard's not going to be on the field. And Rocco Beck at, I believe, Big Ten Media Days just the other day said he wants to get Koby Howard 1,000 yards. And he's very versatile. I know Taylor Mouser loves him. He's very versatile, could move him around, line him up in different places, could even use him on some end arounds, which he did in high school quite a bit. He ran the ball. So it's just going to be interesting with, these receivers have some talent. They got size. They got speed. You sit there and say, why do they only have 500 yards going against Big 12 defenses? Now it's going to be Big 10 defenses. How's that all going to work out? Time will tell. Tight ends, as we both touched on, Andrew Rappleyea, Ben Brahmer are going to be your two main tight ends. So, yeah, Andrew Rappleyea, as you were mentioning, he was a big-time tight end recruit. You know, they called him Baby Gronk. He came out of the New England area, and he actually was going to play. He wasn't going to redshirt in 2024 as his first year. And I think it was the first game of the year or very early on. He, tore his ACL or something. Well, Franklin didn't disclose injuries, but that's what it was. He tore up his knee, so he was out the whole year. And then all of a sudden, everybody heard about Luke Reynolds. And, Luke Reynolds might end up being a good player. But I'll tell you what, Rappleyea was a better tight end last year. It was clear as day. Luke Reynolds has some drops. Rappleyea is clearly the better blocker, better all-around tight end. And Ben Brahmer, we already know about him. He's just your big body, big red zone threat. The type of guy that's going to be running those seam routes down the middle. Third tight end is Gabe Burkle. I think he's recovered from an injury a little bit as well, but he should be hopefully ready to go. And so this would be interesting to see how it's meshed. Now, one position here we'll go to the offensive line. I'm kind of bullish on these guys. I really think I want to be careful how I say this. So, what people thought of the offensive line was going to be in 25, how the end of 24, the offensive line for Penn State was dominant. They're supposed to be one of the best offensive lines returning. It just kind of fell apart. Didn't work out that way. I really think this offensive line could be very, very good. So Malachi Goodman is going to be your starting left tackle. He was a 5-star from New Jersey. Last year was his first year. I don't believe he played that much at all.
He's a redshirt freshman this year.
Yeah, they love him. They love him at Penn State. I've seen him up close and personal, and I remember the offensive line coach Ryan Clanton saying he's probably the most slender, lightest 330-pound guy you'd ever see, and he is. This guy he's 6'6", and I was at an NIL event in Philly, and I was kind of waiting outside on this ledge or whatever, this deck. And all the players came walking by. They got dropped off, and this guy's built so slender. You look at him, and he's a big boy, but man, he's 330, and he looks like he's 280. And they really like him. Trevor Burr is a veteran. He's going to be starting left guard. I believe he was Big 12 honorable mention. Now the right side of the line from center on over could be one of the best in football, to be honest with you. They went out and got Brock Riker in the transfer portal. Brock Riker was the number one center in the portal. By all accounts, Brock Riker is living up to expectations. He's been killing it in camp. He looks great. He might be, of all the portal guys they picked up, or at least even the non-Iowa State guys, he might be the best pickup they had. He's killing it. He's legit. He's supposed to be everything that he's hyped up to be. Right guard, Cooper Cousins. Cooper Cousins was another. He might have been a 5-star guy coming out. He had a little bit of a down year last year, but he was also injured. I know he's battling with some injuries. I don't know what they were, but reports are that he was injured. Another highly ranked guy, a ton of potential, and if he's healthy, there's no reason this guy can't be dominant. And at right tackle, Anthony Donka. Donka has, he came in a couple of years ago. We first saw him play right tackle versus Ole Miss in the bowl game when everybody opted out. And the guy really surprised a lot of people. Initially he was supposed to be an interior guy, and he played, I believe, on the interior last year. But this guy's a really good right tackle. He has to stay healthy. And if he stays healthy and he could pick up where he left off if he could reach his potential, this guy could be a high round draft pick. He really could. I don't know if he could be a first round guy, but he could be a borderline first round draft pick. I'm not saying he's as good as an Olu Fashanu type, but this guy's the guy's 6'6". He's another guy that's 330 and just light on his feet, athletic, long. So I'm very bullish on this offensive line. And it's just kind of interesting because, it all starts up front. So you give Rocco Beck more time. You give the receivers an extra second or two to get open. Does that how much does that help them up their game from just being average, like 500-yard type guys to maybe a little better? How's the ball going to be spread out? With all the weapons they have, is there going to be one main receiver that like jumps out and gets the majority of the targets, or is it just going to be spread out? Same thing with running back. But we'll just have to see how it all comes together. But I think it all starts up front. I think with this offensive line, if it lives up to the hype, I think the rest of the, everything else should hopefully fall into place. And I think it's going to be a pretty solid offense.
Yeah, when we did our Penn State preview, I was not down on the offensive line, but there were some question marks I had about it, and the Penn State fans were not too happy with me in the comments about that, and I understand. I have a little bit of nervousness with Malachi Goodman at left tackle, a redshirt freshman, and that's nothing against him. He's a 5-star, great player, obviously. He has a tremendous body for the position, but, anytime you got a freshman with no experience starting a left tackle, I'm always going to have a little bit of a concern. Does it mean that I think he's going to be bad? No, heck no. Malachi Goodman is, great body. He obviously has what it takes. Matt Campbell's not just throwing a dude in there because he's a 5-star. That's not who Matt Campbell is. James Franklin might have done that, but Matt Campbell's not going to do that. So there's your little James Franklin shot for the video. I'm going to try to put one of those in every video leading up to the season, and you will not hear the end from me if James Franklin loses to Mike Loxley.
That'd be great, man.
We might just do a whole episode on that, Chris.
They hate each other too, man. They don't like each other.
No, they do not. Trevor Burr, he was a little hot and cold last year at Iowa State. Tremendous pass blocker, really good in pass protection. But he also, I think it was the Colorado game where he kind of just like fell apart, and I don't believe that was on him. I'm not remembering everything from that game, but I do remember that that was the game in particular that kind of was his low point of the season. But he's tremendous pass blocker. Needs to be a little bit better in the run game blocking, but with so many injuries and everything they had last year, sometimes that's really hard to work through. And he dealt with some injuries last year too. He was another guy. Just like the entire Iowa State team dealt with injuries. And then Cooper Cousins. Cooper Cousins is probably the biggest question mark I have, not because I don't think he's good, but because just haven't seen him all that much, right? I don't think he's had over 200 snaps in a single season yet. I think that he's done well when he got into the games. I think he played really well in that Clemson game. I think he was one of those guys that was going up against Clemson that people were like, oh yeah, we got a lot of excitement here for his possibility. And he's an Erie, PA kid, so he's going to want to play good for the home team and everything else. So there are parts of this offensive line. Brock Riker, I love. I think Brock Riker was a huge addition through the transfer portal. Only a redshirt sophomore coming in from Texas State. I think he's going to be a great piece for them. And, he's obviously coming in from Texas State, but I do think Texas State was one of the better coached G6 teams, and I don't think they get a whole lot of credit for that. Right. So him coming into Matt Campbell, I think it's going to be a really good fit. Right.
Well, so how you say Cooper Cousins is the biggest question mark, I think that Goodman, in my mind, is the biggest. And you make valid points. Like, when I watched Malachi Goodman, I think I said this in one video, I don't think he's quite a 5-star talent, but I definitely like a 4-star type of talent. Everything to me with offensive tackles, obviously you got to have the size and the length. He has it. It's all athleticism. How quick you got to have quick feet. You got to be an athletic big guy as a tackle, and you got to have, you got to flexibility in that. He has that, but I don't know to what level. Like I shouldn't do this. Like I just like how good Olu Fashanu was. I always kind of compare tackles to who he was, especially Penn State guys. And Olu Fashanu for an offensive tackle has some of the quickest feet I've ever seen. Like his feet were super quick. And like Goodman has the athleticism, he has that ability. I just don't know to what level. Like he's kind of a guy that could be a tweener. Like who was it? Like Caden Wallace. Like Caden Wallace, and I'm not saying Malachi Goodman will be Caden Wallace, but Caden Wallace started for like 3 years for Penn State, and he wasn't all that great at first. And then last year's final year, he played really well, and now he starts for the Patriots. I believe the Patriots. But like a lot of people were saying like Caden Wallace, and even back in the day, Will Fries where they could be like, some people thought they'd probably be better off as guards than they are tackles. I'm not saying that's going to be Goodman, but I kind of see the same thing where is he quick enough, athletic enough to handle some of the top edge rushers he'll be going against in the Big Ten. We'll see. I mean, it's the potential's there. He certainly has a lot of talent, and hopefully it all works out.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. I probably should put more consideration into the Clemson game for Cooper Cousins and the fact that he was injured for a good amount of the season, because he was like in and out of the lineup the whole year. Yeah. I think he played almost like 40 snaps against Nevada, and then he ended up playing like 80 or something like that against Clemson.
It could have been. I know he had a better. I think he played a little bit as a true freshman. I'm looking him up now, and he actually. I just know. When he was a true freshman and everything I saw coming up, the guy was legit. He had all the talent. He had the talent. He had the size. He had the technique, the strength. I mean, the guy. I mean, he's a brick shit house. I mean, the guy is not getting muscled around, and just I'm looking at it down here. Sure.
I'm looking at his PFF right now. Here, I'll bring it up here so we can look at it. Looking at his PFF now, and he's got a pretty good PFF grade in like pass blocking and stuff like that. PFF obviously isn't everything, but here, I'll take it over here so that way we can go down. This is great podcasting, by the way. Watch me make the screen smaller. All right. Yeah, so this is his freshman year here. Like you can see, really good pass blocking there on the side. He didn't do so well against Penn State and Illinois. I'd have to go watch and see what's up with that. But he played 172 snaps that season. Didn't start a single game, but played a good amount. So
yeah, he probably came in off of duty, like if you're talking about his true freshman year. But
yeah, played 21 snaps against Purdue. That was his highest pass blocking grade of the season. So let's look at his last year. Yeah, so
I'm on my phone, so I'm not. No matter how big you make it, I'm not going to be able to see it. Just
yeah. He played 35 snaps against Nevada. He was okay, but yeah, really came into it at the end of the season. Nearly a 70 grade on offense against Clemson. Yeah, that kind of confirms what I was saying. I think so.
Yeah,
we'll see.
The talent's there. It's just putting it together and the consistency, but the talent's there.
Yep. So, all right. Anything else on the offense, Chris, before we get out of here?
No, that's pretty much it. Just got to stay healthy and excited to get the season going.
All right. Looking forward to it, and I hope you're looking forward to the Big Ten Huddle as we will be covering Penn State and everybody else throughout the season. I need to mention FanDuel really fast because they don't like it if I forget to mention them. The conference odds for the Big Ten, Penn State currently sits 6th in the Big Ten, plus 2,200 odds. I think Penn State probably has a better chance of getting to the Big Ten championship game than teams like USC or Michigan, but they are not being favored as much. USC sits at plus 1,300. Michigan sits at plus 1,500. We'll see how it turns out, but yeah, that's where the FanDuel odds sit right now for those two teams. Hey, we appreciate you listening and watching. Please do like the video. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
No, one quick thing when you said this slipped my mind. One player to watch, one true freshman to watch, receiver, Amarion Jackson. I mentioned him, I think, another time. The guy's legit. He's been lighting it up. Campbell said he was the best true freshman in camp this year. And watch for him to get some run this year.
They only have 4 or 5 true freshmen?
Oh, they got more than that. Believe it or not, he actually – because he brought a lot of guys that were going to commit to him It was like there was only one remaining guy from Penn State that came, Jackson Ford, but they got 15 commits they have. But he's and they got some solid guys from there that Campbell was recruiting. And Amarion Jackson supposedly is the best looking one that had the best camp. So
looking forward to seeing Amarion Jackson this season. Looking forward to seeing the Penn State Nittany Lions offense. It's going to be fun. Really high on Rocco Beck this year. I think it's going to be a good time, and we're looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody, for listening and watching to the Big Ten Huddle Penn State edition here on Thursdays. We'll come at you with another one next week. Have a good one. See you next time.
See you later.